Hi, I'm Storm.
And I'm Mike.
And we're from Advanced Group.
What are we talking about today, Storm?
Today we are talking about something we saw on the website, and I believe I just heard you call it rocket something.
A rocket socket.
A rocket socket.
Yeah. So it's sort of looks like a rocket, I guess.
Yeah.
If it's that way up, maybe. People might call them different names. Trying to remember the names that people would call them. We like to call them a rocket socket. People call them maybe a ground spike. I don't know what else they might call it because I forget the different names for them that people might call them.
Well, to me, it looks like it goes in the dirt.
It ground. Does.
Yes.
Yep.
So, is this what we use to hold up our poles?
Yeah. So this originally, or the design, the main reason why people would advocate or give you some sort of advice on why you would use this is for temporary applications. So if you've ever gone past a roadworks on a freeway or a highway or tollway or something, you'll sometimes notice that the signs are in situation for potentially up to 6+ months, plus or minus. Now, that's a long time to have signage that are in place. However, it's still temporary. You can have so many different situations in a 6 month period with gusts and gales of wind and hurricanes, tornadoes, like whatever it is, wherever your location is, you can have different weather elements that could potentially have a sign or sign system fall over, blow around in the wind and potentially cause damage to property, cars, humans. There's all sorts of issues that you can have with temporary signage if it's not fixed down well enough in an extreme weather event. And so people might prefer to have something sort of semi-temporarily installed that's better than just putting a stand on the side of the road. And that's the main reason for this product. However, in rare circumstances, you could use it for permanent installation. However, I don't recommend it unless you're going to install this below the top of this, below the dirt ground surface level, and then put some, if you've got enough earth excavated around it, then you would concrete around this still, even if it's only like 200 or 300 mil of dirt removed around this. If you put some concrete and then smooth over the dirt or tan bark or sand or whatever it is that's in that area over the top of the concrete, it will be a neater way to do it. And the reason why I would do that is because these are notorious for either leaning over is the least worst case scenario, and it just looks ugly and unsightly. In worse situations, people could just lift it up and walk off with it. It could fall over and hit and hurt someone. Worst case scenario, it doesn't stay in situation for some reason. But even just having a pole that says off plumb looks pretty ugly, especially if there's many of them around a car park. I've seen people who've put these around car parks in a shopping centre, and there might be dozens of them, and they've tried to cheat and save time doing it properly, but it looks very ugly, because even if it's solid clay, after a year or two they're gonna all lean over. I guarantee it. I've seen it many times. I've had to fix problems where people have tried to shortcut and save themselves from having to do an installation properly. And I just personally hate it myself. So, there's videos on our website for installing these into dirt for permanent. You can watch those other videos on the same listings. So any other questions?
I don't know if you just went over it, but is there a special way of putting these in?
Yeah, so great question. We have different ways of installing them. The deeper that this goes into the ground, the better. There's two different sizes to this. This one's about 375 or 400 mil. And the reason why it's that length is because if you're in an urban area where you might have services that are under the ground, and if you install this and there's an electrical cable, you don't want this to penetrate or pierce or, come into contact with that electrical cable and potentially electrify this whole rocket socket and any pipe that's connected to it. You might not be electrical, might be gas, stormwater, irrigation. Irrigation is the most common one to hit, but you normally hit that when you're actually digging. Telephone wire, your NBN cable or something like that. So always be very careful. Do dial before you dig if you are going anywhere potentially where you don't know what's below the surface of the ground. If you're really worried, you could get a specialist to come out to probe the ground to see if there's surfaces under there. However, they only do metals. So if there's plastic PVC pipe under the ground, they might not necessarily know that that's there, or it might not show up, and you can still go through a plastic water pipe, which can still cause a fair bit of distress for everyone, damage, time, delays, costs for repairs, all sorts of stuff. So just be extremely careful whenever you're doing anything below the surface of the ground, and be prepared to make sure you have insurance, because there's going to be a percentage of times you will hit something that's pretty much guaranteed.
Does anyone use this at home for any reason? Like they could use it at the back for anything? Have you heard?
I would discourage it from use for most things other than a temporary sign.
Yeah.
I've had problems where I've dug to sort of 200, 300, 400 mil. Most times I install a pole and just dig for 600 mil into the dirt, put the pole, and then put some rapid set concrete in the ground, and then smooth some dirt over the top of that, because you don't have to buy an extra accessory. These are still awkward to install. And so by the time you offset the costs and everything else, it's awkward sometimes trying to install these. If you say, for example, if you're using a sledgehammer and you're trying to drive this into the ground, you can go off plumb, and then you've got to like straighten it as you're installing it, put the pipe in and out, put your spirit level, straighten it, try and play around, and it's not as easy as you would think. Ideally, you want that below the surface of the ground if it's permanent. But if you just can't dig, if it's taking 2 hours to dig a hole to 600 mil, and obviously it's going to offset its cost. So I've definitely done that before in extremely difficult to dig places. However, you can also break the welds when you're trying to install these, if no matter what you're using. So we've got jackhammer attachments. So you use a solid metal insert that goes in the sleeve and connect to the jackhammer. People might have a pneumatic solution instead of a jackhammer, or you could use just a sledgehammer. But even just the elbow grease to install these with a sledgehammer can be a bit laboursome. So sometimes just to dig a hole of 600 mil is better. Every time you see a pole leaning over it, most of the time it's because it's used. It's because of these have been used. Any other questions?
No, I don't think so.
I will just mention quickly, and maybe we'll have to cut back to this, but there's a couple of different things. So when the pole goes into here, there's a wedge which gets sold separately. So the pole goes into here. This is particularly squashed as a design purpose, so that when you put the wedge in here, it doesn't make the pole go off plumb. Once the wedge is installed into this part that's it's got a special notched sort of profile to it, so the wedge can go perfectly in there. Once that's wedge is bashed in, you can't pull this pipe out. Even if you wanted to, you have to use either hit it with a hammer, or we do sell specialist tools separately to remove them if you can't get it out with a hammer. What else do we need to know? Is hot dip gal, which means it won't rust even if it's like in a wet area for its lifetime. I would expect it to be fine for 50 years plus in the ground, even if it's wet.
So did you say this was the only size that comes in, or does it come in?
There is a larger one. We might do a different video for the larger one. The other one's 600 and something mil. So the 600 mil one is for if you're not worried about services below the ground. So if you're in a rural area, or just an area where it's unlikely to be any services under the ground, you could bash it in with a little bit of confidence. Also, make sure you dial before you dig, but that's sort of half of the reason they're thinking behind the two different length ones. People might have other reasons for choosing the longer or shorter one, but that's the purpose in the engineers that have designed and made them those lengths. Yep. Just the final thought on the design of this. If you try and install this without digging in the dirt first, you will often find that because you're trying to hit something that's got quite a large profile, because once you put the metal part in there for bashing this into the ground, you have to have a solid metal thing in there so that you can hit it down. You can't just sort of like, say for example, hit this or hit that, because the metal will bend wherever you're hitting. You need to put that special tool in there. It just won't go into the dirt nicely, and every time I tried to do it without digging some dirt out first, it broke the welds. So I recommend always digging at least that much first before trying to hit this into the ground, just so it doesn't break these welds and waste everyone's time and money.
Yeah. So
that's pretty much about it. If you want to buy this, you can buy it from www.advancedgrip.com.au. And if you like this video, if you want to see more videos like this, hit the like and subscribe button. Thanks for watching.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.